Hey guys, Positive here, and well, I'm finally back. Sorry for not posting the past couple weeks or so. I've been kind of lazy, but regardless, I'm back with another video. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about mistakes, tilt, and just overall how you lose games. So normally I talk about how you should be winning games, things that you should actively be doing, but also I think it's also important to learn about things that you should avoid doing and how to identify mistakes when you're making them, because I really think that's just as important. Without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing I want to make clear is what happens when you're on tilt. For those of you who don't know, tilt is basically what happens when you've been having a rough time and you're just kind of a little frustrated, maybe got some emotions going on. By the way, tilt can usually cause you to make some poor decisions, as you'll see in this replay. So in this replay, I am a little tilted. I don't really say anything in the chat, but when I played this game, I was a little bit tilted after a couple bad losses. But regardless, it'll really start showing some of the decisions that I make in this game, which, spoiler alert, turned out to be pretty bad for my game in this replay. So I just do a pretty usual spot, trying to aggressively spot out the corner, looking for some shots. And I don't find any on that T-54E1 or the Patton. And now, so here's my first mistake. I'm trying to hull down Brawl with the Patton. Like, that's not going to work out. I'm playing a botchet. I fired two to no effect, and I do land third on the Waffenträger, but already that's a mistake. That's a fight I can't win. And when you're playing your games, you should always make sure that you're only taking fights that you can win. And I actually take one back for my troubles there against the Patton. And here's mistake number two. Instead of just backing out, I decided to just keep trying to go for this fight. And this is just another mistake. I end up in a crossfire between this Maus, this Waffenträger, and the Patton, and it's just rough. And within basically a minute, I'm already dead. So after my untimely death in this game, not gonna lie, I just really wanted to blame my platoon mate, my teammates, because I was kind of tilted. I mean, you can take a look at the minimap. Pretty much everyone is playing behind me. Half the team is sitting uselessly in the supremacy cap sniping. It's just really easy to blame the teammates for your own mistakes. But it's really important to just take a step back and think how things could have gone differently. I mean, in just that short minute of gameplay, there were like multiple mistakes. So I should not have been trying to peek on that Patton. That was stupid. And then after I saw like the Waffenträger, I should have checked the minimap and saw that there was basically no one to back me up. And when that Maus showed up, I really should have run instead of continuing to try to take shots. I really should have checked to see where that Waffle was behind me, because he landed a big one on me. Just so many mistakes in just one short minute that caused me to die. It wasn't my teammates who weren't like actively helping me. And I really think it's important to kind of really note these moments when you could have done something differently instead of just blaming the team for being useless or not helping or whatever. So admittedly, that game is a pretty cut and dry example of some pretty massive mistakes that are also fairly obvious, I guess. But I mean, sometimes the mistakes can be a lot more subtle as well. So let's take a look at another game. So here's a replay of me playing the Maus on mines. I know I'm playing a slow tank. What is this nonsense? I've cut out the beginning portion just because the Maus takes like a minute and a half to go anywhere. And watching a Maus drive around is kind of boring. But anyway, so I started this game out fairly standard. Like, I'm actually going Talon because I don't really think that I want to go Hill in the Maus. And I just want to try and play aggressive right from the get-go. But unfortunately for me, a 268 kind of puts an end to my plans. But this game does end up being a loss. And I mean, from the just playing alone, just watching this replay from my perspective, it might be a little difficult to tell why this is a loss and what mistakes I've made here. But in this replay, I do make one major mistake. And I think once I show this replay in Map Inspector, it'll be quite evident. However, just from this footage, I wonder if you guys can see what mistake I make. So feel free to keep watching. And no, it's not just taking that hit from the 268. Yeah, losing 750 hit points kind of sucks. But it's not really the biggest mistake of all time. And I finally land a shell onto this M103. That's some good stuff there. But yeah, a lot of times mistakes can be subtle, and I kind of want that to be the point of this replay. which is why I'm going to kind of play it back for you guys on Map Inspector so you can see how these battles kind of unfold at a much larger level. Because I think a lot of people, they just don't see the bigger picture oftentimes, and it's kind of hard to visualize, which is why I think Map Inspector is a great resource that you guys should take advantage of. Link in the description. But, I mean, all of it will become clear once you see this replay kind of unfold in Map Inspector. And you can see me trying to chase down this 268 in the mouse. But anyway, like, this game's just going to keep going. And like I said, I mean, it all looks like decent gameplay when you're playing it, but like I said, the mistake I made is not really completely evident. So I'm hoping that this replay will just be a good example for you guys to kind of learn from. Because like I said, mistakes can be subtle, and this, I think, is partially a reason for why people sometimes struggle in this game, because even the smallest things that they might not notice can end up just stacking up big time in the long run. And I think that's probably a big reason why a lot of people can kind of get frustrated with their teams, because I mean, just one small thing they could have done differently could have made a huge impact in the game. They just don't realize at the time. It's like I said in the Botched video, it's really easy to blame your team when things just don't go your way, and I think that's something you need to kind of avoid, because I think that if you play perfectly, you'll probably win about 70 to 75% of your games when solo, probably 80-some% if you're platooned. So in general, if you lose, it's your fault, and there's almost always something you could have done differently to at least bring the game much closer or even make it a win. So this game is pretty much winding down. I get killed here, and the rest of my team dies shortly after. But back to what I was saying, like, there's almost always something you could have done differently, so let's get started watching this on Map Inspector. So here I've got the replay pulled up in Map Inspector. Now, in case you didn't know, Map Inspector is an amazing tool, and you should totally be using it. But basically, Map Inspector, it lets you see this whole overview of the battlefield from your replay. You won't be able to see enemy tanks because they haven't been spotted. But once they do get spotted, they'll show up. And also another thing that's awesome about Map Inspector is you can bring up the shot log and you can see exactly where and how people penned you. So it's just, okay, the replay is paused. But with the shot log, I mean, you can see exactly how people penned me. So that 268 shot at the beginning, you can see he penned my lower plate, which is kind of a little annoying and a little lucky, but whatever. You win some, you lose some. But I highly recommend you check it out. Link in the description. Huge shout out to Andrew Karpushin, the guy who pretty much built like Armor Inspector, Map Inspector, basically alone. Anyway, let's get back to the replay. So right here you can see the beginning of the game. Our team actually has 2,500-ish HP lead over the enemy, which is pretty substantial, although most of that HP lead is due to the fact that we have me and the mouse and E100 who have just tons of HP. But regardless, I think the HP bars will tell a pretty telling story in this game. So right now, we're still like 2,000 HP up, and that's quite awesome. And right now, you can see the battle slowly starting to develop. They've got 2 tanks on the hill, and now we're kind of hitting that mid-game stage where the decisions I make are going to really affect the game. And I made the decision here to abandon my chieftain against the 268 and the gorilla, and I'm trying to take shots at the M103 and the T54 on the hill. I mean, you can see that that T54, M103, they're not really doing much, but my chieftain, he's about to get wrecked for this because I left him alone against those 2 TDs, which I knew were there. And at this point, the gorilla starts moving in. So this whole time, I am basically out of the fight. I'm shooting this T54, this M103. I missed 2 shots. I only penned 1. So that's 30 seconds of this mouse doing absolutely nothing because it's a mouse. Like, the mouse doesn't really deal damage. It needs to just slow down the enemy by taking hits. And instead, what I've allowed to happen by doing this is I've allowed this chieftain and this gorilla to try and take this fight on their own. I mean, this damage I'm doing, it's 1 shot of damage, and it's not even really helping the team, because this M103, this T54, they're not doing much. Really, the danger to my guys under the hill is like this E100, this Waffenträger, this FB Heavy, and this whole time, like full 30 seconds, I'm just being completely useless. And something that's important to remember is games are usually decided within like the first 2.5 minutes. So 30 seconds of this mouse doing absolutely nothing is a massive mistake. I mean, you probably didn't notice it in the replay, but once it's on Map Inspector, it's just painfully obvious. And in this time, our Gorilla 15 gets nuked, and that HP advantage we have is gone. Now the enemy is 1,500 hit points up, and this is basically something we never recover from. When you have like a mid-game HP deficit, you almost never recover from that without some hard carrying. And like it just doesn't happen in most cases. So yeah, that Gorilla, he took 2 shots, and I'm sure if you watch the replay, like just rewind my YouTube video, you'll just see our HP advantage just disappears. And that's just something you cannot do. So when you're playing your games, even just taking like 640, 1,000 damage from something, that's oftentimes enough to just seriously just change the game. Because these HP deficits, they just don't go away. Like you can see, the game has developed significantly now. This HP deficit has not disappeared. We're still 1,500 hit points down. And it just gets worse because once you get towards the end of the game, that 1,500 hit point deficit just becomes proportionally larger and larger. And now, even though the tanks are even, we both have 4 tanks on each side, they have like 1,800 hit points more than us. That's not something we can come back from, especially considering that most of it is on my mouse. Having hit points on my mouse is not going to do my team any good, especially at this stage in the game. And really, if I had just been with the Chieftain, with the Gorilla, on the front line, taking those hits from those TDs, keeping the more important tanks on my team alive, this could be a very different story. I could have a Chieftain, I could have a Gorilla alive with me to handle this FE Heavy, this Waffenträger. But, like, I wasn't there when the fight was happening, and I basically just let the battle happen without me. And this is why I really disagree when people say you should emphasize survival. Like, I played cautious in my mouse, and look what good that did me. I have a full HP mouse. It doesn't do anything at the end of the game. And that's really important, is you need to make plays when it counts. You can't just let people go down for nothing. Because like RE100, our T30, they were getting hammered, and I was doing absolutely nothing in return. So, I mean, when you guys play your own games, always make sure that you're ready to do something. If your team is getting hammered on one side, you need to make a counter play on another. You need to be making your plays. You can't just sit back and let the battle happen without you. It happens all too often. And then when things like that happen, it's really easy to say, oh, the team just died without me. Like, yeah, the team died without you, but there's so much I could have done if I had just played aggressively from the front lines, and I could have brought this one back. But this one just ends in defeat because I was doing essentially nothing. And that about covers it for this replay. I mean, things to take away. Like I said, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's that it's really easy to blame the teammates for your own mistakes. But I really want to challenge you guys to take a step back and look at what you could have done differently. Because a lot of times those mistakes are going to be hard to spot. Like in the case of this video. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys might not have picked up on it, like just watching it from my perspective the first time around. But in case you guys still haven't figured out, the mistake I made is I just sat in this back corner and I tried to take shots on this T-54 and this M103 when I could have been making a play because the tanks that were really kind of pressuring underneath the hill, it wasn't these guys, it was like these guys, this E100, FE, Heavy. I just was not in a position to really do anything to help the team. Like, sure, I end this battle on, I think it's like 3,800 damage, so it's like top for both teams, but at the end of the day, most of that was done towards that FE Heavy when the game was essentially already decided. And a lot of times it's really just going to be up to you to make the plays. I mean, it's really easy to blame the teammates for quote-unquote camping and blah, blah, blah. But it's always, the burden to win is almost always on you because, like I said, if you play perfectly, you're going to win like 70% of your games. So if you don't have a 70% win rate, stop complaining about your teammates camping. I mean, everyone's going to have them. Like this game, I had this guy camping. I had like this guy camping. And I'm pretty sure the enemy team had someone sitting in the back too. I don't remember who it was. But I think that FE215B just kind of camped the whole game until the end when he brawled me. But yeah, those mistakes can be fairly subtle and it kind of takes some time to pick up on when you actually make them. But I mean, if you're really serious about getting better, I do recommend maybe taking one or two kind of bad losses, uploading them to Map Inspector, and kind of seeing what you could have done differently. because I think Map Inspector is just a really awesome tool for doing that, because a lot of the strategic situation becomes really apparent once you see something going on Map Inspector, especially once you can see the team HP bars. So even when things look close in game, like for example at this moment, it's like both teams have 5 tanks alive, but our team just has 30% less hit points than they do, and most of our hit points are like I said on my mouse. And I think it's really interesting sometimes to just kind of watch how these battles play out, and it's kind of interesting to see how these HP deficits affect the game. So I mentioned that Gorilla getting nuked, losing pretty much all of his HP for nothing in return. Yeah, that 1600 hit point deficit he put us in, that never went away. We end the game on a 1600 HP deficit. So yeah, if you generally guys like if you take a lot of unreturned damage, that's oftentimes something your team cannot come back from. So I guess that's another thing that you should keep in mind. And really, like, it just comes down to being able to make the plays when you need to make the plays. Like when both teams have like 5, 6 tanks still in the game, like that is your time to be doing something. If you find yourself not contributing anything, you're already losing the game. And I guess the final thing I want to end on is, yeah, there are going to be games that are essentially unwinnable. Like 30% of your games are going to be like that if you're not playing in a platoon. But I mean, most of them are winnable. And even though you might not necessarily pick up on your mistakes, all you can do is just keep getting better. And that's basically it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you have a wonderful day. And bye.